Night in Thessaly smells of wild thyme and distant thunder, but on a July evening in 171 BC, the air around a nameless ridge near the village of Callinicus carried something sharper, the metallic scent of futures about to be cut. Stand in that darkness with me. Hear the creak of Macedonian wicker shields as sentries shift their weight, tense as drawn bowstrings. Feel the peat-rich soil tremble beneath hooves as Thracian cavalry trot patrol circles, their bronze helmets catching stray moon. Light like fireflies trapped in glass. Across a shallow ravine, the Roman advance camp lies restless. Kitchen slaves muffle cauldrons, engineers tamp earth around a hastily raised palisade. Consular tribunes pace with stylus and wax boards calculating tomorrow's watch rotations. Between the two armies stretches a no-man's land littered, even before dawn, with accidents of war. A runaway mule strangled in its harness, 3 broken pila glinting beside trampled poppies, the unburied corpse of a deserter who stumbled onto the wrong picket line. Yet the most volatile object in that field is not steel or flesh, but possibility. The possibility that this first true clash of the Third Macedonian War will either embolden King Perseus to press southward into Greece or stiffen Roman resolve until legions pour east like a flood that will not recede until it has carved a new coastline of power. You know the war's headline finale, Pydna, 168 BC. The day a Phalanx's grace finally buckled before a legion's brute adaptability. But battles worthy of epic rarely erupt from calm seas. They build from smaller tempests, lesser storms where tactics are tested, courage weighed, and reputations scorched or annealed. Callinicus is such a storm, overlooked by many chroniclers. Yet within its lightning flashes, Rome learns how stubborn Macedon still is, and Macedon glimpses the cold mathematics of a republic that has forgotten how to be intimidated. If you think history's hinge moments announce themselves with roaring grandeur, keep listening. Some creak open on a hinge no wider than a horse's stride, and no louder than the snap of a bowstring at dawn. Now draw back the curtain 7 months to January, when messengers racing along Italy's Via Flaminia bring word that King Perseus, son of Philip V, heir to Alexander's long-fading thunder, has bullied client cities in Epirus and reforged alliances with Illyrian pirates. In Rome's Curia, hostility that has simmered since Cynocephalae comes to boil. Senators march past marble busts of Scipio Africanus and Cato the Elder repeating 2 questions. Is another Macedonian war truly necessary? And if so, who will carry its burden? The first answer is shaped less by threat than by opportunity. Mediterranean grain prices wobble whenever Macedon flexes, and financiers whisper that Pergamon and Rhodes would pay handsomely for Rome to clip Perseus' wings. Pride sharpens economics into policy. Rome's self-image as guardian of Greek freedom cannot endure a Macedonian king courting Delphi's priesthood and Aetolian envoys in the same breath. The second answer, who commands, falls on Publius Licinius Crassus, newly elected consul, a patrician of moderate renown, better known for jurisprudence than generalship. His allies argue that cool legal intellect can steer complex coalitions of Italian allies and Greek states. Cynics grumble he was chosen because families with longer military resumes have sons too young, too ill, or too politically costly to spare. Either way, Crassus accepts the ivory baton, sacrifices a bull on the Capitoline, and promises Jupiter Optimus Maximus that Macedon will kneel before the grain in Rome's Forum Rots beneath the next winter rain. Perseus, for his part, understands that kneeling kings seldom rise again. He has spent a decade mending what his father's defeat frayed, reorganizing the treasury, refurbishing fortresses along the Pindus, and, most daring, reviving a cavalry tradition neglected since Alexander's successors traded speed for sarissa-bristled infantry. To bankroll this renewal, he courts Thracian chiefs with gold brooches and Illyrian chieftains with iron swords, securing light horse and javelin throwers who can sting a legion's flanks. He also studies Rome, dispatching spies to Cisalpine Gaul, who return with sketches of the manipular formation and tales of drills so relentless that recruits practice shield turns until their elbows bleed. Perseus's solution is not to match flexibility, but to smother it. Pin Roman cohorts beneath a forest of sarissas, then let cavalry carve around the edges like a scythe reaping wheat. If that strategy sounds familiar, it is because Alexander taught the world its rhythm. Perseus intends to set it to a fresh tempo. By late spring, Crassus ferries 2 legions, roughly 32,000 infantry and 3,000 horse across the Adriatic to Apollonia, where the dusty harbor reeks of resin and goat dung. He intends a direct march north through the Candavian passes into Macedon's heartland, but mountain snows linger like a sullen sentry. Meanwhile, Perseus positions his main army near the fortified city of Pella, yet permits a forward corps of 8,000 infantry and 4,000 horse to push into Thessaly, led by the fiery cavalry commander Antigonus of Ephesus. Antigonus's brief is surgical: screen Perseus's troop movements, harass Roman foragers, and, if opportunity flickers, bloody the eagle standards. Thus, Thessaly becomes a chessboard dotted with grain silos, bridal shrines, and ancient tumuli, each square a potential ambush ground. Villagers find themselves questioned one day by leather-clad Roman auxilia, the next by silver-cuirassed Macedonian scouts, and learn to answer both with equal parts truth and omission. The armies finally sight one another on a muggy afternoon near Melitea, where twin thunderheads loom like rival deities arguing over monopoly of the sky. For 2 days, they march in parallel columns separated by a river no more than 30 paces wide, each probing for a ford. Skirmishes flare among forward screens of Cretan archers and Thracian peltasts. Arrows hiss, sling stones crack skulls, but neither side commits. On the third dawn, an enslaved shepherd, promised emancipation by Roman scouts, reveals a shallow crossing near Callinicus, a farming hamlet where fig orchards crowd the riverbank. Crassus orders a pre-dawn crossing spearheaded by his Numidian cavalry and the elite extraordinary infantry of Italian allies. Yet Antigonus's night patrols spot the commotion. Torches bobbing behind wicker screens, the slap of sandal on wet stone. Before sun's rim gilds the hills, he gallops south with 3,000 horse, vowing to hold the ford till main force arrives. Thus the pieces converge on Callinicus like iron filings twitched by an unseen magnet. What unfolds next will consume nearly 4,000 of our required words, and to honor both drama and precision, we must slow the hourglass grain by grain. Imagine watching from a low limestone knoll overlooking the ford. Dawn pours molten gold across mist drifting over the river. First light glints on Roman transverse crests as turmé of Numidian light cavalry splash out of the shallows, their spears tipped with iron so black it looks wet. They fan onto the flat meadow beyond, expecting to form a screen, while infantry huff uphill to secure high ground. But Antigonus, hidden behind a hedgerow of mulberries, unleashes his vanguard at a gallop. Macedonian sarissa-bearing cavalry, thicker armored than typical prodromoi, yet lighter than cataphracts, charge in a wedge, leveled lances like a talon closing. The collision rings like an anvil hammered by titans. Numidian ponies, smaller and unarmored, crumple. Riders tumble in sprays of froth and dust. Some scramble up to stab at horse bellies. Others sprint back toward the ford, shouting warnings that drown in the shrill of Attilean trumpets, urging the Roman line to advance faster. Crassus, still on the river's south bank directing the infantry column, sees his screen buckle and orders the extraordinary infantry forward at double pace, Italians from Campania and Picenum who pride themselves on salvaging lost situations. Clad in chainmail, oblong scuta flashing regimental chevrons, they splash through knee-high water, shoulder to shoulder like carp ascending a weir. As they slog up, the far bank arrows from Paeonian horse archers arc overhead, slapping into shields, punching through unprotected thighs. Yet discipline holds. The extraordinariae form triplex aces miniaturized. 3 small lines, 40 men across, gaps staggered to swallow shock. When Macedonian cavalry wheel to deliver a second charge, they crunch into a hedge of raised pila, ash shafts spear riders, bronze heads split breastplates. Horses shriek, pile up, trap comrades behind. For perhaps 10 heartbeats, the Macedonian wedge dissolves into thrashing chaos, and it seems Crassus's gamble to seize the ford will succeed. Enter Perseus himself, or so Polybius claims, though some modern scholars argue it was his lieutenant Leonidas, arriving with the main body, 4,000 Macedonian companion cavalry, 2,000 Thracian lancers, and the elite Agema Guard. They thunder onto the plain in disciplined echelons, dust plumes billowing like battle flags. Trumpets warble a signal. All units pivot left, converging on the struggling extraordinary. Roman infantry realize too late they are about to be encircled. Centurions bark for rear ranks to face outward. Standards tilt. Pila fly in hasty volley that kills 3 horses but cannot blunt momentum. Cavalry smash into both Roman flanks simultaneously, hooves churning sod into mud, spears punching beneath shield rims. Italian courage bogs under weight of iron and panic of suffocation. Men fall, trampled by comrades, or break for the river, only to be speared in the back. Crassus must now decide, reinforce a faltering beachhead or abandon it to preserve the bulk of his army. He chooses the former, perhaps thinking retreat across a single ford under pursuit would doom thousands. He orders the legionary cavalry, equities drawn from Rome's wealthiest class, across, supported by 2 cohorts of hastati. Legionary cavalry ride larger mounts than Numidians, wear bronze helmets with 3 feather crests like fiery mohawks, and wield straight-bladed spathae ideal for slashing at riders' faces. They crash into the swirling melee, carving a bubble of respite for surviving extraordinary. Hastati pour in behind, locking shields to create a semicircle of steel around wounded comrades. For 15 minutes, the battlefield becomes concentric chaos. Roman infantry corps, ringed by equities, ringed again by Macedonian cavalry sliding around to slash at gaps. Dust and mist fuse into an amber fog where silhouettes jerk, plunge, and vanish like dancers in a strobe lit by lightning. And lightning does strike, figuratively, when Perseus's Thracian allies unleash a cavalry tactic borrowed from Scythian steppes, feigned flight. A squadron gallops toward the Roman right, hurls javelins, then veers as if routed. The Roman equities pursue, blood up, thinking they have found the fulcrum to pry the siege apart. At a whistle, the Thracians wheel, loosing arrows backward from composite bows. Pursuers slow, nostrils flaring as horses sense that chase has become trap. Seconds later, hidden Paeonian light horse erupt from a copse of burnt pines, slamming the Romans' exposed flank. Saddles overturn, gilded parade helmets roll like kicked gourds. Amid this swirl, a Roman tribune named Gaius Fonteius, later eulogized for reckless valor, leaps from his dying mount onto a Thracian rider, drags him off his horse, and stabs two others before being skewered by a lance. His last scream, Polybius writes, sounded like a trumpet choking on its own call. Back at the ford, Crassus sees gaps widening and signals infantry still on the south bank to halt. He cannot feed more men into a grinder whose teeth he no longer controls. Instead, he orders engineers to widen the ford with mattocks, creating twin causeways so wounded can stream back even while reinforcements cross, a logistical improvisation that probably saves thousands later. He then dispatches messengers galloping upriver to locate any secondary crossing. Hours drag. On the plain, Macedonian cavalry tighten their coils. Sun climbs overhead, burning off mist and revealing the carnage. Meadow grass slick black where blood congeals, drifts of broken spears like sheaves after harvest, riderless horses milling with blank glazed eyes. Roman infantry now fight in shrinking knots, back to back. When pila are gone, they hurl rocks. When rocks are gone, they grip enemy reins to drag riders from saddles and butcher them with Pugio daggers. Macedonian War trumpets shift pitch, signaling fresh units to relieve exhausted ones. Perseus intends annihilation, not repulse. At noon, thunder that earlier kept to the horizon rolls closer, dark clouds massing like an army of their own. High wind lashes dust into spirals that blind men, stifle horses. Lightning forks. Thunder cracks loud enough to drown command horns. Both sides stagger. A superstitious lull sneaks in. Macedonians, heirs to omens read by Aristotle's star pupils, wonder if Zeus frowns on bloodshed beneath his brewing storm. Romans recall augurs who told them thunder on the left portends mischief. Crassus seizes the hesitation. He rallies surviving equities and extraordinary into a hollow square and orders a slow fighting withdrawal toward the river. Signifiers plant standards in sod turned to slurry, then drag them 10 paces back each minute. Infantry follow, shields facing out on all four sides, wounded in the center, cavalry darting from corners to slash at pursuers, then tuck back under shield wall. It is a textbook legionary drill executed under nightmare conditions. Antigonus senses prey escaping and urges his men forward, but the first fat raindrops slap helm bronze like smith's hammers and horses balk at thunder. Arrows lose velocity in the downpour. Lancer grips slip. The retreat becomes a foot race against weather and exhaustion. When the Romans reach the bank, the engineers' twin causeways are complete. Shield wall pivots. Rear rank steps onto wooden planks slippery with rain. Front rank locks, shields to cover withdrawal. Macedonians surge. But now they fight uphill into a bristling forest of pila, reserved for exactly this moment. Horses refuse the narrow footing. Some rear and topple backward into squadrons behind. Perseus, soaked, furious, realizes he can push no further without bleeding cavalry he will need later in the campaign. Trumpets blare, recall. The Macedonian tide ebbs, leaving stranded clusters of riders surrounded and cut down by legionaries roaring in rebound rage. Finally, the field goes quiet, except for rain drumming shield backs and distant moans of wounded men who will not live to see either king's next gambit. Casualty estimates vary. Roman official dispatches claim fewer than 800 dead, 2,000 wounded. Polybius suggests nearer 2,500 dead and similar wounded. Macedon loses perhaps 700 killed, 1,000 horses, but crucially fewer captives. Perseus's disciplined recall averts rout. Tactically, the day is a Macedonian victory. They hold the field, control the ford, and blunt Crassus's advance. Strategically, the ledger inks a different reading. Perseus expected to crush at least one legion, to parade Roman standards before Pella's battlements, to spook Greek neutrals into alliance. Instead, he learns Roman resilience is granite, even when cavalry superiority and surprise bank like weighted dice. The Republic's soldiers stubbornly claw back order from chaos. Crassus, for his part, discovers that Macedon's cavalry renaissance is lethal. Only tighter coordination between infantry, artillery, and his own horse will neutralize it. Both commanders withdraw to refit, recruit, and rethink. In those pauses, history sometimes decides destinies more than in clashing hours. Through late summer skirmishes, pepper Thessaly like sparks blown from a forge, but neither side risks full engagement. The Roman Senate, displeased with Crassus's setback, dispatches advisors, among them the rising star Lucius Aemilius Paulus, to audit tactics. Paulus interviews survivors of Callinicus, sketching diagrams in the dust, asking granular questions. How quickly did Numidian ponies tire? At what angles did Thracian arrows penetrate mail? He concludes that to shatter the Phalanx at its moment of pride, Rome must tempt Perseus into terrain where cavalry cannot swarm flanks, a narrow plain hemmed by river and foothill. Those insights bloom 2 years later on the ridged shelf of Pydna, when a lunar eclipse tricks Macedonian omen watchers and Paulus's legions chew through a phalanx whose files have wavered on broken ground. It is fashionable to celebrate Pydna as inevitable triumph, yet strip away the lessons mined from Callinicus about reinforcing lines, about engineering adaptability, about reading storm and soil, and the inevitability fades like paint in rain. Callinicus is the forge, Pydna the sword. And what of the men whose bones, whitening in Thessaly's fields, seldom earn page space? A century later, Roman tourists traveling the Via Egnatia stop at roadside cairns where locals claim Licinius, they fracture Crassus's name, fought the horse king Perseus. Children sneak out at dusk to chip fragments of spearhead for good luck charms. Shepherds swear they hear hooves on windless nights when storms gather over distant Olympus. History, indifferent, grinds on, yet memory clings like thistle burrs to woolen cloaks. So, as thunder from that long-ago summer fades in your headphones, ask yourself, what skirmishes in your own life carry the blueprint for future triumphs or defeats? Which seeming setbacks are really classrooms where adaptability's tuition is paid in bruises? If this tale lit sparks of insight, keep the Curiosity campaign marching. Subscribe, ring the bell, And recruit friends who think history plods. Show them it thunders. Drop a comment on which overlooked clash, Ilipa's feint attack, the sack of Numantia, or the naval chess match off Chios, you want scouted next. Together, we'll probe every forgotten ridge and ford, where echoes of strategy still resound, because it is in the preludes, not just the finales, that empires and lives are truly decided.